Have you ever felt like you're doing everything you can, but your financial life just isn't moving? You work, you chase, you strive, but the money isn't growing, the doors aren't opening, and it seems like there's always something holding everything back, as if there's an invisible barrier between you and the prosperity God promised. If you identify with this, then pay attention, because what I'm about to show you here could be the turning point you've been waiting for. Today, I will reveal two simple practices that anyone can apply in their daily lives, direct, no-nonsense practices that have real power to break spiritual blocks, open financial doors, and unlock areas that have been stagnant for years. And it's not empty theory, it's something that works. These are principles taught by great men of faith like David Yonggi Cho, who proved with their own lives that faith with attitude changes any scenario. This video, it's not just another motivational advice. It's a clear step-by-step guide to help you start seeing results. If you put into practice what you will learn here, prepare yourself, good news will come, doors that have been closed for years will open, and situations that seemed lost will begin to change. You will understand why so much was stuck and what to do in a practical way to turn this around now. So watch until the end, because this revelation cannot be ignored. Now that you've understood what was holding you back financially, and discovered simple practices that have the real power to turn things around, does it make sense to continue on your own? This content has given you clarity, direction, and tools few have access to, and this has already begun to change your mindset. So, show that you value what you've received. Like the video and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving truths that unlock your journey. Here, each new video is a missing piece in your transformation. Those who are experiencing this, continue. Those who understand the value, strengthen this mission. You know, when you wake up already thinking about the bills, what you'll need, what didn't work out yesterday, and the fear that it won't work out today. Yes, this kind of thinking seems small and harmless, but it's one of the strongest roots of the scarcity that dominates many people's lives. And this is where the second point comes in, the one that, honestly, may seem silly at first glance, but completely changes the course of life for those who decide to truly practice it. I'm talking about the way you say it, that's right. The words that come out of your mouth are either building or destroying the path to your prosperity. Look, you might not even realize it, but you're constantly saying things like, "I'm unlucky with money. My life will never change. Rich is the one born with a silver spoon in his mouth. It's hard for everyone. God is taking a long time to bless me," and so on. These phrases, spoken automatically, seem harmless, but they're decreeing your life. And do you know why? Because your mouth has creative power. What you speak, you attract. What you declare, you live. This isn't just fancy self-help talk. It's a spiritual principle that great men of faith, like David Yonggi Cho, have taught their entire lives. He repeatedly said that the spiritual world responds to what your mouth releases. In other words, if you're constantly saying you're defeated, there's no point in praying for victory. If you only talk about scarcity, there's no point in asking for abundance. It's like trying to harvest grapes after planting thorns. And here's a reality check that needs to be said. There are many people praying correctly, fasting correctly, going to church, but living in financial defeat because they continue to speak incorrectly. And until this key is turned, life will not change. Because blessing moves through faith, and faith expresses itself through the mouth. So, as long as your words are aligned with fear, doubt, and complaint, scarcity will continue to dominate everything. Now, when you start speaking with conviction, as someone who believes, as someone who has already seen the promise fulfilled, then yes, things begin to happen. It's not magic, it's active faith. It's waking up, looking at the difficult reality and declaring forcefully, "God is my provider. Today things will change, doors will open. I will have a new idea, the right connection, an unexpected resource. Prosperity is coming my way." And even if everything around you says otherwise, you continue to declare boldly, because your word is the seed of your harvest. It may seem too simple to work, but try changing what you say for a week, just 1 week. Cut out the complaints, the negative comments, the "I can't do it," the "this isn't for me," and start declaring the word, the promise, the faith. Then tell me here in the comments what changed. In fact, comment on the word now. Authority, just so I know you understand that you are the one in Charge of what will happen in your life, with your faith, with your mouth, with your actions. And before you think this is just positive thinking, let me tell you something. It's not. Positive thinking does help, but what we're talking about here is warred with spiritual authority. It's prophesying based on what God has already promised. It's declaring what heaven has already released, even if it hasn't reached your bank account yet. It's not giving the devil the pleasure of hearing words of defeat from your mouth because he feeds on that. Every time you speak as if you've already lost, you strengthen the wrong side of the war. Now, when you speak as if you've already won, you create an atmosphere of faith that attracts miracles, connections, provision, and strategies. Some people complain about life, saying nothing works, and then they want God to bless them. But how can God work if you're canceling the blessing with your mouth? The Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. In other words, it's with your words that you decide whether you'll remain stuck or break through. And I know you're going through a difficult time, and perhaps until now you've spoken negatively on impulse, to vent, because no one taught you differently. But now you know. Now you have awareness, and those who have awareness have a choice. So the choice is yours. Continue using your mouth as a tool of destruction, or start using it as a key to liberation. And you know what's most powerful about all this? It's that when you change your language, the people around you begin to feel it. The atmosphere shifts. Opportunities begin to appear. It might even seem like a coincidence, but it's not. It's the spiritual world responding. It's the harvest of the right words beginning to sprout. And you don't have to speak beautifully, full of memorized verses. It's not that. It's speaking with faith. It's speaking truthfully. It's using your mouth as a weapon of spiritual warfare every day. Because there are things that will only unlock when you learn to declare what God has already said about you and stop repeating what fear and failure have led you to believe. So before moving on to the next point, think, what phrases have you been repeating that are blocking your life without you realizing it? What words have you been letting slip out of your mouth when no one is looking? Because that's where the secret lies. It's not just in worship, in prayer, or in moments of despair. It's in everyday life. It's when you're alone, talking to yourself. That's when you have to decide, will I continue to feed scarcity, or will I declare abundance? And you know what's most interesting? The next practice I'm going to show you is directly related to this. It's like a spiritual reinforcement of what you've started here, because there's no point in changing what you say if your heart is still stuck in something that few people notice, but that silently hinders the lives of thousands of people. This next part might even catch many people by surprise, because it's so common that most of the time, people don't even realize they're doing it. And worse, they think it's a normal, human thing, when in fact it's one of the heaviest barriers to prosperity. The truth is, there are many people asking for blessings with their mouths, but carrying garbage in their hearts. And I'm not talking about blatant sin, nor something absurd. I'm talking about a feeling that silently corrodes the soul, delays life, and prevents any financial door from opening. Pity. Yes, that wound that you pretend you've forgotten, but that, every time someone brings it up, still hurts. And here comes something that few have the courage to say. Holding on to resentment is one of the biggest causes of spiritual, emotional, and financial blockages that exist. And I'm not the one making this up, no. Men like David Yonggi Cho have spent their lives teaching that releasing forgiveness is a spiritual key that unlocks areas of life that were completely blocked. And it makes perfect sense because hurt stains the heart, and a dirty heart can't receive anything new. It's like trying to fill a glass already full of mud. No matter how hard you try to add clean water, it will always mix with the dirt and remain unsuitable. The problem is that many people over-spiritualize their lives, but forget that the kingdom of God is also order, cleanliness, and lightness. God doesn't thrive where there's emotional poison. A little something might happen here and there, but the overflow, the extraordinary, that breakthrough that changes everything, that only comes when the heart is clean. And cleansing your heart means releasing the person who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. You deserve to live the life God has for you without carrying the weight of a past that will never return. And I know that maybe a movie is playing in your head right now. Someone who betrayed you, abandoned you, deceived you, humiliated you, left you high and dry when you needed them most. And yes, it was unfair. It hurt so much. Maybe you didn't even have a chance to confront this person, to say everything that was holding your breath. But look, let me tell you something harsh but necessary. As long as you remain trapped in the pain of what was done to you, you will remain trapped in scarcity as well, because hurt is like a spiritual shackle. It doesn't just bind the soul, arrest the flow of life. That's why releasing forgiveness isn't an emotion, it's a decision. It's not about feeling, it's about choosing. You choose to let go. Choose to no longer carry that thing inside you. Choose to no longer feed that story. And do you know what happens when you do this? A lightness invades, an inexplicable peace arrives, and with it, a movement in the spiritual world that changes everything. Ideas return, motivation reappears, opportunities begin to arise, and what once seemed stuck begins to flow. It's as if you unlocked a safe that had been jammed for years, and everything starts to happen at once. The question is, do you want to remain right, righteous, but stuck? Or do you want to be free, even without an apology? It's tough, I know, but it's necessary because forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you, about your peace, your future, your destiny, and more than that, about your prosperity. Some people are missing out on promotions, opportunities and growth, without even realizing it's because of an old grudge that's still there hidden. They think they've overcome it, but their heart still aches just remembering the person's name. This is a sign that there's something unresolved inside, and as long as it's unresolved inside, nothing gets resolved outside. So take a deep breath now and do a real exercise. Think about who still occupies space within you, but shouldn't anymore. Think about who you need to let go of, not because what they did was right, but because you decided to, not to live trapped in what happened. And comment here freedom. So I know you're deciding to move forward lightly, cleanly, and ready to live what God has prepared for you. This will be a turning point for many things in your life, and you'll remember this moment in a while and say, it was there that everything started to change. Now pay attention, because the next practice I'm going to show you complements everything you've begun to experience here. It's like the fuel needed to make your faith come to life and begin producing visible results. And that's exactly where many people get stuck, even after forgiving and changing their words, because there's a concrete, often overlooked action that activates in the spiritual world what the mouth declares and the heart believes. This is where many people will feel the blow, because this is where intentions are tested in practice. Some people say they trust in God, that they believe in provision, that they want to prosper, but when the time comes to act in faith, they freeze. The truth is, those who trust demonstrate it, and those who truly believe take a stand with their actions. It's easy to say you trust. What's really difficult is doing something that proves that trust, and that's precisely why fourth practice has such a powerful impact, because it demands a concrete decision, not just words, but action. I'm talking about plant seeds with generosity. And no, this isn't manipulative talk or the talk of someone trying to rip you off. It's a spiritual principle that's at the root of the prosperity of many men and women who broke free from scarcity and saw God open doors where none existed. David Yonggi Cho spoke openly about this. True faith needs to be visible, and it becomes visible when you plant, even when it seems like you have nothing to give. That's what moves the heavens. That's what shows you believe before you see. And we're not just talking about money here, okay? While finance is one of the most direct ways to apply this, generosity goes far beyond that. It's time, attention, practical help, caring for those in need, and a willingness to serve even when you're in need. Because when you plant what you have, even if it's little, you activate a spiritual law that never fails. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap, and there are many people praying for a harvest without having planted anything. It's like trying to withdraw money from an account you've never deposited into. It's impossible. And it's not because God is evil, it's because the law is clear. You reap what you sow. And what's more, you reap as you sow. Generosity isn't just a nice act, it's a powerful spiritual strategy. Because when you give with the right heart, you're not just helping someone, you're breaking a cycle of scarcity that could trap you for years. It's like saying to the spiritual world, I trust so much that it will return, that I am willing to release the little I have today. And you know what's even crazier? The enemy knows this. He knows the power that exists when someone plants with faith. That's why he'll always whisper in your ear that doubt. What if you run out? What if it doesn't come back? You already have so little, what are you going to give? He knows that if you listen to this, you'll close yourself off. And those who close themselves off from giving also close themselves off from receiving, because the same channel that releases is also the one that receives. That's why some people live with their hands closed and don't understand why nothing new arrives. Their hands are busy holding back fear, doubt, the little they have, and in the meantime, they lose the much that God wanted to give. And look, being generous isn't about having a lot. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding that what you have today, no matter how small it seems, is a seed in the hands of God, and a seed only has real value when it's planted. Stored seeds rot, planted seeds multiply, and this applies to everything: time, help, attention, resources. And yes, it also applies to money, because many people want to break financially, but they don't plant anything that points to that, and so they wait for a harvest, but the ground is dry. Jesus himself spoke about this in several parables. And do you know the secret of the people who prospered in the stories he told? They multiplied what they had. They did not save. They invested, shared, and gave. And God always honored those who acted with courage and generosity. Yonggi Cho said that faith needs to have a point of contact, something that materializes what you believe. And the seed is this. It is the visible sign that you trust that provision will come, even when it hasn't arrived yet. And maybe now you're thinking, but I'm broke. How am I going to plant anything? The answer is, plant what you have. It could be a small amount. It could be time. It could be a gesture. It could be serving someone with what you know how to do. But do something. Because those who don't plant because they think it's too little also don't harvest because they never broke that cycle. And once again, it's not about quantity. It's about faith. It's about intention. It's about releasing in the spiritual what you want to harvest in the natural. Let me tell you a quick story. A woman once gave an offering in worship of just a few coins. It was all she had. And Jesus said, she gave more than all the others. Why? Because she gave with a heart full of faith, not fear. This moves heaven. It activates promises that were stuck. It shows that you trust God more than what's in your hands right now. So answer me, what have you been holding back for fear of missing out? What could you be planting, even if it's small, that could change the course of your life if released with faith? Comment here. Multiplication. If this has sunk in for you, I want to see who is willing to break with the scarcity mentality and activate a new cycle based on trust, faith, and attitude. And look, remember this. Generosity doesn't impoverish anyone. What impoverishes is the fear of giving, the fear of letting go, the fear of trusting. Now, generosity liberates, activates favor, and opens doors where before there were only walls. And that's exactly what I'll show you in the next point, because there's a silent, often overlooked attitude that reveals how much you truly believe that what God promised will be fulfilled. And when this attitude enters the scene, barriers begin to crumble. Now things start to get more serious, because so far we've talked about changing what you think, what you say, forgiving, and planting. All of this is powerful. But there's one detail that, if you don't pay attention, will make everything you've learned so far lose its power. And this detail is so common, so present in many people's lives, that it enters without asking permission and drains your energy, your peace, and even your faith, without you even realizing it. I'm talking about the way you deal with the waiting. Because, let's be honest, not everything happens when we want it to. Sometimes God speaks, you believe, you act, you plant, and nothing changes immediately. And that's when many people get stuck, give up, or fall back into the cycle of scarcity. Have you ever experienced this? Starting something with faith, with enthusiasm, feeling that this is it. But after a week, a month, 3 months, nothing. Then comes that voice saying, and see, it doesn't work. That's nonsense. You were foolish to believe it. That's right. This is the moment when most people give up. But do you know what separates those who experience breakthrough from those who live stuck? The posture while waiting. Because waiting is a test, and this test is silent, invisible, and cruel to those who lack the emotional and spiritual structure to endure it. Yonggi Cho talked a lot about this, that spiritual growth and the manifestation of provision are not instantaneous. They require patience and persistence. And it's not just any patience. It's the kind that keeps believing even when everything screams against it. It's the kind that looks at the empty account and says, God is working. It's the kind that stares at the empty refrigerator and says, "My provision comes from above," because it's easy to declare when the answer has arrived. The challenge is to sustain faith amidst silence, delay, and uncertainty. And then something powerful comes into play that few people realize. Waiting is not a punishment, it is a preparation. God doesn't keep you waiting because He wants to punish you. He keeps you waiting because He knows there's still work to be done within you. And sometimes what's blocking the answer isn't outside, it's inside. Some people pray for prosperity but don't yet have the maturity to deal with it. Others ask for open doors but don't have the emotional structure to handle what those doors will bring. Waiting refines, strengthens, cleanses, and aligns. And those who don't understand this get lost in the process. Now, besides patience, there's another ingredient that goes hand in hand with it: persistence. Because waiting isn't about sitting back and complaining. Waiting is about continuing to act. It's about continuing to pray, plant, declare, forgive, and trust. It's about keeping the movement going even without seeing results. It's like the farmer who plants and waters, even without seeing the plant grow in the first few days. He knows a root is forming, and that's faith. Faith isn't just believing it will happen. It's acting like someone who knows what's already happening, even without seeing it. And maybe that's what you're missing. Stop alternating between faith and doubt, between hope and discouragement, because this emotional back and forth weakens your journey. There are times when you're high up, believing, excited, and other times you're dragging yourself along, questioning everything, and that's normal. But there comes a point when you need to take a stand and decide, either I live by faith or I will live by logic. And by logic, everything will remain stuck. Comment the word here, trust, if you understand that true faith is staying focused even when the miracle hasn't knocked on your door yet. And look, there's one more important detail. Waiting also reveals what truly dominates your heart, because those who only believe, when they see, never really believed. Now those who maintain their posture, even in the desert, are already on the path to the promised land. And this is what I want you to understand. Waiting is not wasted time. It's the time when God works the most. But He works while you remain steadfast, while you keep moving, while you persist, even without applause, even without apparent results. And you know what's most curious? Often, when the answer finally arrives, it comes at a time when you're no longer anxiously waiting. It simply appears as if to say, now you're ready, and then everything starts to make sense. The struggles, the difficult days, the silence, everything becomes part of the story. Because God is never late. He arrives at the right time, when you no longer depend on the blessing to believe, because your faith has become mature enough to walk even without seeing. And now, speaking of seeing, the next practice is where the eyes of faith encounter the most sensitive point in many people's spiritual and financial lives, because there's no point in planting, declaring, hoping, persisting, if deep down there's a hidden obstacle sabotaging everything. An obstacle that's linked to a delicate and very powerful area of your life, and that, if you don't address it, will continue to undermine your harvest before it even sprouts. You know that feeling of doing everything right, but still feeling empty in your connections, as if no one understands you, as if the relationships around you are shallow, cold, or worse, only appear when you have something to offer. This is where most spiritually awakened people begin to realize that something deeper lies behind true prosperity. And we're not just talking about money. We're talking about meaningful connections, and that is point 7. A practice that, when applied, changes not only your financial life, but reorganize your relationships, clear your field of influence, and attract people who really add to your journey. The truth is that many people live surrounded by people, but alone, full of voices around them but devoid of direction, and this is no accident. At some point, you'll realize that to truly grow, you need to choose who you hang out with. And this practice is simple, but it requires courage. You need to seek deep, sincere, intentional connections and stop wasting energy on people who only pull, suck, and give nothing in return. And no, it's not selfishness. It's wisdom. It's protection. It's alignment with what God wants to do. David Yonggi Cho talked a lot about spiritual friendships, people who lift you up in prayer, who speak with faith when you're weak, who remind you of God's promises when you forget. And if you stop and think about it, it almost makes your chest tighten, because it's rare to have someone like that these days. Most people are surrounded by superficial relationships based on self-interest, convenience, and appearance, and that's why, even after applying all the other principles you've learned so far, things still get stuck, because the environment around you doesn't support what God wants to build. Want to see how this applies to your financial life? Some people are always talking about faith, abundance, promises, but every time they have a new idea, the first person they share it with is someone negative, someone who doesn't believe, who only knows how to point out risks, who always says, "This won't work." And do you know what happens? They get discouraged before they even try. The harvest is aborted before the seed even touches the ground, all because of a wrong connection. And the worst part, many people insist on maintaining these bonds out of fear of being alone, emotional attachment, or habit. And meanwhile, opportunities slip through their fingers. You need to understand that relationships are not neutral. They either bring you closer to the promise or push you further away from it. There's no middle ground. And when you begin to seek true connections, people who inspire you, who challenge you to grow, whose faith aligns with yours, who don't compete with you, but root for your victory, your life begins to take on a new rhythm. Ideas flow, motivation increases, and even God's favor manifests itself more intensely, because God honors unity, but He doesn't pour new wine into old wineskins. And this also applies to friendships and alliances. And maybe right now you're thinking about someone, or several people who are close by but only drain you, people who never truly celebrated any of your achievements, people who make you feel small when you share a dream. Do you know what you have to do? Clear the field. That's right. No guilt, no anger, no drama, but with awareness. You need to make room for God to bring you the right connections. And as long as you're stuck in shallow or toxic relationships, you won't have the emotional and spiritual space to receive the connections that will truly take you to the next level. And look, this doesn't mean you have to cut everyone out of your life, it's not that. But you need to reorganize the weight of each relationship. There are people who should be in the footnotes of your story, and you're putting them in the chapter title. And then when things go wrong, you don't understand why. It's because you're giving too much voice to those who don't have faith, who don't understand you, who don't have a vision for growth. And here's some practical advice. Start praying that God will bring connections into your life that are aligned with your purpose, people who will challenge you to grow, who will pray for you, who will dream with you, who will invest in you with words, support, and faith. And comment here the word alliance. If this topic resonated with you, I want to know who's willing to change the emotional and spiritual environment around them to experience a new time of true growth. Because connection isn't about quantity, it's about quality. A single right connection can completely change the course of your life. It can open doors, lift you up in a difficult moment, introduce you to an idea or a contact that will turn your life around. But this only happens when you decide to let go of what holds you back and begin to value what drives you. And speaking of impulse, the next practice goes straight to the point where almost no one likes to touch. It exposes a hidden wound that sabotages relationships, destroys opportunities, and worse still, keeps you emotionally paralyzed without you realizing it. It's subtle, it's silent, but it's one of the biggest growth thieves out there. And in the next point, you'll understand exactly how to beat it once and for all. There comes a point in your journey where you can no longer pretend everything is okay. You look around and see that you've grown in some areas, learned principles, planted seeds, changed your way of speaking, forgiven, been patient, reorganized your connections. But there's still an invisible break, an emotional block that prevents you from fully surrendering to the newness God wants to bring. And this break has a name: fear of being rejected. This is what we need to talk about now, with maturity and courage, because this fear, even if silent, is one of the greatest enemies of prosperity. And make no mistake, it appears in disguise, sometimes as shame, other times as perfectionism, self-sabotage, insecurity, or that obsession with wanting to please everyone. But deep down, it's always him. The fear of taking a step, trying something new, exposing yourself, being authentic, and not being accepted. This fear paralyzes. It convinces you that it's better to remain silent than to be frustrated, that it's safer not to try than to risk making mistakes. And do you know what this creates? A life in waiting mode, waiting for the approval of others, waiting for a sign that never comes, waiting for courage that only appears when you decide to act. And look, you might even try to justify it. Oh, it's just my way. I'm more of a man. I prefer to avoid confusion. But deep down, you know this behavior is keeping you from opportunities. You've stopped speaking up in meetings, presenting ideas, saying no when necessary, embracing your identity as a child of God for fear of looking weird. You've swallowed dreams to fit into small spaces. You've diminished yourself to avoid bothering those around you. You've put projects on hold for fear of judgment, all to avoid rejection. But the truth is, those who live to please everyone will never live the purpose that God designed. David Yonggi Cho talked a lot about spiritual identity. He said that when you understand who you are in God, you stop seeking validation from people. And that's what cures this fear. Because the fear of rejection is fueled by a lie, that the value of your life depends on the acceptance of others. But when you discover that you were chosen, set apart, empowered, and approved by God, people's opinions lose their power to control you. You begin to move more freely. You begin to act without needing applause. And that's when doors begin to open. Because now it is your essence that commands, not your fear anymore. And I know it's not easy to break this pattern. It goes way back. Sometimes it started in childhood, with a harsh word from a parent, an unfair comparison, that feeling of never being good enough. Other times, it came from an abusive relationship, toxic. Friendships, criticism that impacted you more than it should have. But the time has come to break free, because as long as you let this wound dominate your decisions, you will live below what was prepared for you. And God didn't call you to live half-heartedly. He called you to overflow. But to do that, you need to free yourself from the need to be accepted all the time. Start practicing this today. Speak the truth with love, even when it's uncomfortable. Say yes to what helps you grow, and say no to what takes you away from who you want to be. Take steps even if you're shaking. Present that idea, record that video, send that proposal, show who you are, even knowing there will be people who will judge you. Because true success does not come from pleasing everyone, but from those who have the courage to remain whole, even when it bothers them. And the more you are you, the more the right doors will open. Because the wrong ones only stay open when you're trying to be something you're not. And comment here release if this truth has reached you now. Because many people will leave this video determined to no longer accept living as a slave to other people's opinions. And this is already the first step to living what once seemed impossible. Because when the fear of rejection falls away, you free yourself to take a stand, to create, to lead, to do great things without apologizing for existing. And that's what changes everything. God made you to shine, not to hide. And from today on, this needs to be more than just a nice speech. It needs to be your reality. Now that you understand what was holding you back financially and see, step by step, how to break down these invisible barriers, a lot of things started to make sense, right? That feeling of heaviness, of stagnation, of nothing moving forward, all of that started to fade. This video gave you direction, clarity, and practical actions that are already changing the way you think, speak, feel, and act. And the very fact that you've made it this far already shows that something inside you has decided to change. And when that happens, there's no turning back. It's growth, progress, and real transformation. Here's the thing. Other people are also stuck, feeling everything you felt before watching. And what you do now could be the push they need. So strengthen that purpose. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment here. Change, because this word sums up what began today. This helps this content reach those who also need to break free from scarcity and experience the abundance God promised. And stay tuned, because in the next video we'll take an even deeper step, and this time it's something few have the courage to talk about, but it could be the real game changer in your journey to prosperity. So stick around, because what's coming next will shake everything up.